Hi, how's everyone doing? This is Amy Hamilton, author of The Project Manager Life is a Project and The Consummate Communicator Character Traits of True Professionals. And I am super excited as part of 24 authors in 12 hours. I have Jessica Van Dop DeJesus here, and she is the Dining Traveler. This is her little travel bag. It is so super cute. And this is something I'm going to cherish forever. This is Jessica's book. And it is just phenomenal. I don't know if you can see all the pictures in here, but it's one of these books that visual stimuli is amazing. So Jessica is the Dining Traveler. And I would like for you, Jessica, to just share us a little bit about what inspired your book.
So when I came up with the idea of doing the Dining Traveler, one of the things that as a travel and food writer and very active on social media, I started seeing that people have become more inspired to visit a place just based on a picture that they saw on Instagram or on Pinterest or whatever social media of their choosing. And I thought it would be like, how cool would it be to do kind of a hybrid from a travel guide and something that is visual that can inspire someone to visit a certain destination, and compounded by the fact that I grew up in Puerto Rico, and I felt that there wasn't a lot of stories being told by Puerto Ricans about Puerto Rico on mainstream travel media.
So, Jessica, as you started to develop this book, a significant event happened in Puerto Rico that kind of changed the trajectory. Can you share with us a little bit about the Hurricane Maria?
Yeah, so I started the production of the book in 2016. So we did all the content in 2016. And of course, life happens. I got pregnant with my daughter and went back on active duty for a little bit. And when we were getting ready to do the final edits in 2017, September 2017, actually, that's when Hurricane Maria happened. And of course, devastated the island, devastated the tourism industry. There was a lot of rebuilding. So it set us back, obviously, in production, because for me, it was really important to return to the island at least a few times before we went into our final editing part.
So that is so interesting. I want to share with everyone the link to the Dining Traveler. As you know, I'm like a big fan, and also Jessica has been kind enough to let me contribute to the Dining Traveler in the past. This has been pretty awesome to be a guest blogger. One of the fascinating things is Jessica built her brand on traveling, and right now it's COVID, and travel can be really difficult. So, Jessica, can you tell us what you've done to kind of shift during these really challenging times during COVID?
Yeah, so as the name implies, Dining Traveler. So we are a travel food website blog, and so food is a big part of what we do. We love to tell the stories of food, of the people behind the food. And when obviously we couldn't travel, we decided to do the Dining Traveler cooking series, where I recreate dishes from my favorite destinations, and it's been an amazing experience because it I'm finally home, and I love to cook, and being on the road all the time, you just don't have the time to do that. And B, it just really gives you a great appreciation for international food. And I think that sometimes in this country, certain dishes are not given the importance or the value that they deserve. And it just, again, a reminder of how much work it takes to make this food.
I think it's really exciting. And one of the things that I think is starting to open up to people is almost like travel through your food locally. And one of the things I noticed is I kind of had my go-to restaurants of, okay, this is where I order Chinese from, or this is where I order Thai from. And now I'm kind of like, okay, I need to look. And I'm just discovering like Ethiopian restaurants in my neighborhood and places like that, Ecuadorian food. I mean, oh my gosh, so much. So what's your advice for people on lockdown to explore and, travel through their cuisine in their neighborhoods?
Well, I think that we're very fortunate, especially you're in Northern Virginia, and you literally can find, you name like the most like niche cuisine, and they probably have it there in the whole Northern Virginia and also DMV area. We're very fortunate to live in this region that is so international and so culturally rich. But even in smaller places across the country, it's first of all, you can order takeout. So if you're like, I don't know if I'm going to like this or not, but at least you're supporting local restaurants and you get to eat it at home. And if you don't like it, then you don't like it. But at least you're not having, I think that a lot of people, especially with trying something new, they might be a little bit embarrassed of going to a restaurant. But a lot of restaurants obviously had to reinvent themselves or doing takeout. And I think it's a good way to kind of dip your toes into trying different cuisines without fully committing.
I really kind of like that concept. And the other thing is you do a cooking show. So what advice do you give to somebody like me who's kind of intimidated to try cooking from multiple international cuisines?
Just try it. I mean, again, we're home. There's not, there's nothing holding us back. I think that this area, again, is also great from the perspective that we have so many international supermarkets too. So you can buy a lot of the ingredients here. And I think that a lot of people are just so afraid of failure, but make it. If it doesn't come out fine, then just, throw it out or, repurpose it or whatever. But and I feel that now there's so many resources there. There's so many videos on YouTube, so many articles, so many things for you to learn how to tools. I mean, I really go on a rabbit hole. Like I bought so many kitchen tools during this quarantine. I mean, I bought a tortilla press and a bunch of other stuff. But there's so many tools out there to make to make that whole cooking process so much easier.
So you bring out some really good points, and we are both located very close together. And so Jessica was actually able to come here and physically give me her copy of the book, which I'm so excited about. And I was able to give her some copies of my books. And so that was super fun. But what's your advice for people who live maybe someplace rural? And also, this is an international broadcast. We've had people from Australia, from Germany, from the Netherlands. What's your advice for people who are cooking international who might not be able to get access to all the ingredients? Like, how do you substitute? Like, how do you do this?
Well, I think a lot of the ingredients you can get on Amazon. So, for example, I did a yakisoba cooking class, and I gave people like pretty much all the links of like those niche ingredients that you need. You can find them online. So, again, I think that this is a great time to get into international cooking because everything is so close reach. And I mean, obviously, we lived in Germany together, and now, I lived in Belgium, and that's also a great way to explore a different part of your community. For example, in Belgium, we have a big African community. It's a great way to go and discover those markets. In Holland, you have the Asian supermarket. So there's just so many different ways to kind of tap into something that perhaps you weren't exposed to before.
So Jessica, we've both written books and done some podcasting and things like that. What's your advice for people out there right now during COVID to stay motivated through these times?
Oof, if I knew the answer to days and I'm like, yes, I love this. And I'm like, and I think that being conscious about your feelings and accepting that there are days that you're not going to be 100%. And that there are mornings you wake up and you're like, oh my God, this is not going to end, or I'm not going to be able to travel. Or in the beginning for me, it was devastating. Like every contract that I had, I worked in the hospitality industry. So all my clients were like, we have to shut down. We can't pay you anymore. So, it takes a lot of soul searching. I think it takes not being afraid of talking about with your, finding people that you trust, whether it's your friends, your partner, your parents, whoever that person is in your life, but, not suppressing those feelings, because the more you hold them in, the more hopeless you're going to feel. And I believe that if you're a person, maybe Jeff Bezos is happy, these last 7-8 months because his business has been so good for him. But I think that for the rest of us, like regardless of your socioeconomic factors or whether you're single, you're married, or, whoever, oh, there's the doorbell, or whoever you are, there have been challenges, right? And I think that and I think one of the challenging parts, at least for me, I've always used traveling as something to look forward to. Oh, in a month, and when you don't have that to look forward to, it could be very demoralizing. And I have to say my experience of being a Marine has also helped me get through this, of having been on deployments or you're in the field for a prolonged period of time, and knowing that this shall too shall pass, and using that time in a productive way.
You bring up a great point there about being a veteran and resiliency. I'm going to do a shameless plug that on November 11th, which is Veterans Day, the next 24 authors in 12 hours is going to be featured. And it's going to feature James Woosley, who is an Air Force veteran and my editor from Free Agent Press. He is super amazing. And we're going to have 24 authors all featured in that segment. And one of the reasons why I reached out to Jessica is because she's phenomenal as an author, phenomenal as somebody who inspires me, and also just making me so hungry right now for food as I'm going through this kind of marathon interview session. But the resiliency piece is so important. And I think that that's something that we kind of all need. And Jessica, you've had a unique situation that not all of the authors have had, and you have a young child at home. What's your advice for parents who have young children at home and who are also trying to do their business or trying to telework from home with young children?
Survival. I mean, and I go back to, we're so accustomed, and I think that people that get into making their own books or creating their own brand or whatever, and we're very driven people, right? And we have this vision and we need to execute it. And is going to a point of acceptance that perhaps you can't do all the 10 things that you want to do that day. And I have to remind myself, because I'm one of those people is like, yes, I'm motivated and I want to do this. And somebody calls me, oh, we want to work in this project. And sometimes I take a lot that I can't, that physically I can't do it all. And being able to accept that, and to, we're and it's challenging. I have almost 4-year-old, and she's a very active child. And, but again, I also have to remind myself that she's only this age once. And sometimes it's difficult for me to turn off the computer. I'll be very frank, but the work will be there. It'll be there tomorrow. It'll be the day after. But your kids grow up, and one day they're going to leave, and you're going to look back and you're going to be like, shit, I should. Oh, sorry.
Good thing the Marine's coming out of you.
And I have to say, and it's like the other day we went to the park, and in the back of my head, I'm like, I have this deadline. And and I wasn't 100% present. And I have to have these constant reminders of being self-aware that you have to find time to be present for those who love you. And I think beyond having children, whether you're single, you have to make time to talk to your parents. Like, they're not going to be here all the time, or to your siblings, or, whoever those people are in your life that do get you through these moments.
Yeah, and Jessica, you brought like some real clarity to me the other day on the point that we don't know other people's journey. We don't know their background. We don't know what they're going through. And one of the things about your work, especially in food, is food connects people. And I think it's such a tremendous thing that you do, that you share the food from your home, that you share food that you really love from all kinds of different cultures. And what's your advice for people to connect for food over distances right now?
Well, I love the whole concept, and I've done this like with whether it's friends, like virtual happy hours, or I'm part of this association of women in food called Les Dames de Couffier, and we've had dinners together. Right, everybody's in their house, but we're doing it through Zoom and talking about the meals that we're having and the story behind the meals. And even if it's like reconnecting with your old friends from college or your siblings and saying, hey, I'm like, let's make mom's favorite stew and get together on a Sunday through Zoom and just chit chat, but is never going to replicate that experience of seeing people face to face. I'm a big face to face person. So to me, this is difficult, right? That we can't be in the same room, you and I talking, but I also think this is a unique experience. I know that I've reconnected with a lot of my friends that I haven't seen in years, because now it's like almost accepted to have these virtual relationships.
So I think that's a really great point. I don't know if I shared with you, and it's really kind of cool that you talked about it, is one of the things I've started doing on Zoom with my own mom is started to have like virtual kind of experience nights with her. And one of them recently was we did tea. So we had the scones, and we had the petit fours and the little cucumber sandwiches and stuff. And we were just kind of able to share this experience. And I saw my mom a couple times a year before, because she lives far away. And then it was kind of like this whole like, oh, well, now this is kind of what we can do. And now it's actually transformed my relationship of having these kind of virtual things. So it's in some ways it's taken away and some it's added. What's your advice to people as they start planning on travels again as the dining traveler? How do you start planning for your trips, and then how do you start doing it safely when we're allowed to travel?
Well, I just booked my first trip. And being conscientious of the place that you're going, like what are their needs? I think if it's a place, would I travel to a place where I don't know anybody there, and in the worst case scenario that I do get sick and I don't have that support? Probably not. Or a place that doesn't have like a good healthcare infrastructure. Those are things to look at. I think being mindful of the local population, whether it's, you're driving to Vermont or going to Europe or whatever it is that you're doing, but, being mindful of the locals, being mindful of wearing a mask. And, I'm a big believer in keeping people safe and keeping ourselves safe, getting tested before, even if it's not required, but being tested. I think in DC, they have an awesome system where anybody can get tested for free. So you don't even need to show like proof of residence that you live in DC. You just walk up and there's several locations. We've gotten test results back in like 2 days. So being tested before you go, and just going to restaurants, tipping well, because I just did an interview at a restaurant and I was just telling a friend of mine how I was so impressed, like seeing these cooks, and it's hot in the kitchen. And, I was shooting some B-roll in the kitchen with a mask, and I was like, oh my God, this is like, and these people do this for 8-hour shifts. So compensating, not complaining as much, and giving people the value for what they create, whether it's at a hotel, restaurant, or whatever experience that you choose to have.
No, that's some really good tips, and I know that for me, I'm looking forward to traveling, but at the same time, it's a little bit about what can you do that's safe, and it's really changed a lot of the paradigms of what do we do. So my question for you is, for the brand of the Dining Traveler, what do you have on the horizon? What are some new projects and activities, and when are you going to do your next book?
Well, so I am going to do the third part of the Dining Traveler cooking series. And next, we're going to start to shoot in a few weeks, and we're doing a Puerto Rican Christmas. So we're doing all Puerto Rican recipes, and we are doing it on site at a place called La Cosecha, which is a Latin American food hall here in Washington, D.C. And it's a gorgeous space. Very excited about that. And I also, next year, 2021, my plan is to take the Dining Traveler cooking series to the road. So I want to go to homes of people in different places, permitting, obviously with the current situation, but doing, taking that on the road, continue to write and to share those stories. And as to the other book, I mean, my husband is like probably giving me the look because he's been like through this whole process with me. But yes, I would love to do a continuation of this book. I'm still trying to figure out which destination would be the most viable to do something. So we're just still kind of like laying the groundwork for that.
So I would encourage you. I've been encouraging authors today. I came up with an entire slasher series like in 2 minutes, but don't worry. It was for a guy who wrote Killer Addiction. So it was completely appropriate for his genre. But I mean, maybe while you're here, you could sort of do the Traveler's Guide to, Dining Traveler's Guide to DC. It's your own backyard, but for so many people, this is a destination, and people are allowed to travel here again.
And that's definitely one of my like destinations that I've been thinking about. So yeah, we'll have to stand by. I think that as many of maybe perhaps the people you've interviewed, I think that selling the book has been harder than, and not as in a hard sell, but it's exploring your different sales channels, and folks that do everything that is text, is more print on demand and things like that. That it's obviously your costs are more fixed, but for us, that we have a book that is hardcover, and it's mostly photograph, and we're very particular like on the quality of our paper and materials, and having to buy all that inventory up front and then trying to sell it at a price that is still above our margins has been one of these challenging pieces, but again, it's some type as an education that I believe that even if we would have paid to take a class, we would have not had the same knowledge that we have now learning this whole process.
You bring up such a great point about everything that we're doing right now is a learning process. And even the things that we learned, we're learning differently now. The last speaker talked about this whole concept of situational project management and
Mhm.
how you have to realize that even though you had a really successful project before, things have changed and it might be different now. So, what's your advice on that, on dealing with new and emerging situations?
Well, I think for me, like this whole virtual environment has been amazing in the sense that you can connect again with so many people. I've had some great interviews that I've done with folks that would have not been available to me were if this not had occurred. A lot of conferences are now free because they're virtual. There's a great play. Again, it's not the same, obviously, if you meet somebody, oh, you met somebody at a coffee break, at a conference, whatever. But, you know, you can still tweet at them, oh, you know, I love the point that you made about X, Y, and Z. And I think that every niche now is whatever niche it is that you're doing, they're doing these type of activities. There's a lot more training that's available, a lot more time. So even if you don't have that, like a book tour, for example, you're not at a place signing books, but there's different things that you can do via social media, whether it's a video, whether it's Instagram lives, Facebook lives, or whatever it is, what channel you choose to promote your work in. But I think with this digital age, there's so many opportunities that we can take to also promote our work.
No, I think that's such a good point. One of the authors I interviewed earlier was from Australia, and he actually said that because he's no longer commuting into the city, into Melbourne, that this is what gave him all of his time to write his book. And
Yeah.
so it's really kind of people taking advantage of the
Mhm.
opportunities and looking for what things are different. And your hospitality, many of the other speakers have also been like coaches or keynote speakers, and it's really changed how people are communicating, and it's kind of that perception of you may have went from talking locally and nationally and having to fly there to having to be international and having to realize you have this entire global audience
Mhm.
in virtual space open to you. And
Yeah.
you have a couple exciting endorsements that you've been doing recently. Do you want to share that?
I'm very excited. So we just did, and I always say we because it's me, but then I have a team of people that really helps things happen. And we just did a campaign with Nespresso promoting their Puerto Rican coffee capsule, which was super, super exciting. And I've written a few stories for some major outlets like Open Table. I have a story now, right now being edited with Eating Well magazine, which is a first for me. I doing editing part of the Fooders DC travel guide. So and all this, like, is some amazing opportunities that have come my way, and very excited about that.
So a lot of silver linings. So I
Mhm.
have a question for you, and this goes back into you have a very young child at home, and you make some very exotic dishes. How do you, as a parent, have a child and expose her to these foods, and at the same time accept that sometimes kids really don't want to try a lot of things?
So we've been trying to expose her ever since she, you know, 6 months when you can start eating solids of different foods, different flavors, and I think that is just like any other human, right? There's certain things that we prefer over others, and it's the same thing with a kid. And we were just having this conversation, like, you know, we've been very fortunate that for the most part she will at least try stuff. Now she's being a little bit pickier, but we've also told her, it's like, this is what you're gonna get. So either you eat this or or you eat this. So and we try to teach her about food. So when we're cooking, we're like, smell this ingredient. And we got her a play kitchen and like play vegetables and for her to learn. And now she's like, you know, so now she's making, the other day she made the spaghetti for my husband and she's like, Papa, here's some spaghetti. And she like scribbled something on a paper and she's like, look, it's my recipe. So when you expose kids and this is their environment and they're used to seeing us in the kitchen, and when I say us, it's my husband is also a really good cook, and this is what she's grown up around, and she's learned to appreciate food.
That is terrific. So, Jessica, we are getting to the point where we're going to have to wrap up. I'm going to go on to the next author. But are there any last things I didn't ask you about that you wanted to share, or anything else you want to tell the audience?
I think that since this audience is either authors or aspiring authors, I have a series called Book Tuesday on my Instagram at Dining Traveler. And every Tuesday I share something about my book journey. This past Tuesday I shared about book tours and how to leverage. I know a lot of folks probably starting in a new project that's probably going to be done after, 2021, 2022, that they can do in-person events. So I talk about that. And I also talk about leveraging the virtual space as well and getting your audience to be vested in being part of it. So yeah, check it out.
Thank you so much. So this is Jessica Van DeJesus and the Dining Traveler and her amazing, amazing book. I mean, I'm talking so much eye candy. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you for having me.